My name's Daniel Bushell. Chemical agents are red lines, except critics say when the US uses them on a far greater scale. Coming up.
1 in 3 US servicemen permanently disabled. An explosion of birth defects they don't even have medical terms for. And an FBI whistleblower ties America's drug epidemic to the highest levels of government.
White phosphorus was used, which is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, a chemical weapon.
US troops report orders to use white phosphorus in civilian areas. The chemical, nicknamed Whiskey Pete by the US Army, is banned as a weapon. The Toxic Substances Agency notes it burns through eyes, heart and bones of anyone in the vicinity. Time after time, officers in Iraq describe firing the chemical at people in a process they call shake and bake.
We fired shake and bake missions using white phosphorus to flush them out.
Again and again, sending burning white phosphorus, they call shake and bake, into the buildings.
The documentary Fallujah, The Hidden Massacre says it's obtained this footage of US forces firing white phosphorus into residential homes after the attack. The area and anyone in it has simply disappeared. The Guardian reports the Pentagon lied and denied using white phosphorus as weapons until the evidence became overwhelming. Hussein Mahmoud lived through US occupation of Iraq, Operation Desert Storm in 1991, as well as Saddam's chemical attack on Halabja in 1988. Hussein joins us. Thanks very much for coming on. When first did you find out about chemical weapons use?
I, for example, never knew about what chemical bombardment is until Halabja was hit in 1988. And let's not forget who sold these weapons to Saddam at the time. It was the Western governments. In 1991, when the Allied forces attacked Iraq, they have used various weapons with depleted uranium and so on and so forth, and also followed by the 2003 occupation of Iraq. People were turned into guinea pigs, and that, of course, we can see the consequences that many children are born deformed. Western government comes and talks about human rights and democracy and not using this and that. I find a very huge double morality.
The highest rate of genetic damage in any population ever studied, radiation expert Christopher Busby has reported from US depleted uranium munitions in Iraq. Birth defects worse than after the US nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Democracy Now! Reports are being found in babies. Doctors told renowned war correspondent Dar Jamel such injuries have simply never been seen before.
Malformations that she said they don't even have medical terms for. It's common now in Fallujah for newborns to come out with massive multiple systemic defects, babies being born with 2 heads, babies being born with half of their internal organs outside of their bodies, and it is ongoing.
The BBC notes the Pentagon's response to complaints from Iraq about depleted uranium attacks.
They wanted to go away because we kicked the crap out of them.
But that doesn't explain, says Common Dreams News Centre, the shocking numbers of US vets affected. Of 697,000 US troops in the first Gulf War, the Department of Defense now admits nearly 250,000 are permanently disabled. From a battle that lasted just 100 hours, 1 in 3 troops hit, notes the Beyond Treason documentary, is a simply incredible figure. Guardsman Gerard Darren Matthews' daughter was born with most of her hand missing and other deformities. He believes his service in Iraq is to blame. Independent tests on the veteran found high levels of depleted uranium in his body. Some veterans who have gone to court have received admissions that their disabilities could only have been caused by U-238. Doug Rock was put in charge of DU cleanup after Operation Desert Storm. The Army was well aware of its toxicity, he says, not only in areas they hit, but for anyone working with it in the vicinity of DU or even breathing downwind of uranium particles. Yet he says no one was warned of its incredible danger. Truthout notes Major Rock now has radiation damage to his lungs and kidneys, brain lesions and serious damage to his eyes.
The United States Army Common Task Training states very specifically uranium contamination will make food and water unusable. And yet we use it in combat all over the place. That's why the United Nations Subcommission on Human Rights had ruled that uranium munitions were an illegal weapon, because they're indiscriminate. They can't be cleaned up, and they last for eternity.
The United States invaded Iraq and used weapons of mass destruction against the Iraqis. Depleted uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years, the Middle East and Central Asia and Yugoslavia are contaminated forever.
Tomorrow marks 12 years of the US-led bombing of Afghanistan, America's longest war. The journal Military Medicine took samples from civilians in bombed areas and found concentrations of uranium higher by 8,000%. This, claims the Afghan DU and Recovery Fund, is the result. Investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald says the US establishment is systematically hiding horrors committed by its forces from the American people. Official casualty lists in mainstream media don't even mention the Afghans or Iraqis. Civilians who die simply don't exist in corporate sites. It's why, says the site Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, the American public thinks just a few thousand civilians have been killed there. Violent deaths from the invasion in Iraq, notes US-based organisation Just Foreign Policy, is actually 1.5 million. If you add those killed from Operation Desert Storm, followed by years of US sanctions, Countercurrents notes the 4.6 million matches the deaths from Nazi gas chambers. Con Hallinan writes for Foreign Policy in Focus. He joins us. Con, great to see you. How do we explain all this?
This American exceptionalism. Americans are better than everybody else. American democracy is better than any other democracy, even though we have one of the lowest voting rates in the world for a major developed country. And it also allows soldiers to kill people.